and welcome to CVTV, where school is always cool. And today, my guests are my 8 junior students from my English class. And right now, as most juniors do, we study American literature. And believe it or not, sometimes I take that into a slightly different direction. Still has to be American literature. You'll agree with me that it is. But we actually took a unit called the JFK unit. And I don't know, Jacob or Cooper. By the way, this is Jacob Brandt, and that's Cooper Broughton. A couple of boys who are, again, juniors in my English class. How long did we spend on that unit?
It was about better part of 3-4 weeks, I think.
Was it that
there.
long?
4 weeks.
You know what? I get carried away. I've probably read more on the subject than I would like to even believe myself. Almost to the point of obsession, some people say. But I really believe that everybody needs to know about it because I believe it is a pivotal event in the understanding of who we are as an American people. So we're going to get into that today. I just want to give you a little bit of background first, and then we're going to get into a discussion. Later on, we're going to have 2 of the juniors who, in the independent reading portion of my class, the first 10 minutes of every period, engage in a novel or perhaps some nonfiction piece of material of their liking, whatever they want to read, as long as it's challenging. So we're going to be discussing, I believe, something called the Warren Report and another book that one of the boys read called JFK Has Been Shot, A Parkland Hospital Surgeon Speaks Out. And I'll hold those books up after a bit. But first of all, a little bit of background on the assassination of John F. Kennedy, just to see what you as the public know about it. Maybe you're too young to know about it. I know that in our school, I am the only teacher here on staff in the building at Central Valley Public School that has a living memory of the event. I was 4 years old. Now, in psychology, there's a thing called imprinting. And believe me, this 4-year-old was imprinted when my dad pulled me in from the backyard into our house in Martin, North Dakota, and told me, you better get in here, the president has been shot. I mean, it's all on TV. It's my first real memory as a human being. So, if this is a conspiracy, and many people believe it is, did you know that as many as 60% of all Americans believe in conspiracy theories in general? Did you know that the term conspiracy theory started on late November, December of 1963, just following this event? It had never been used before. This is kind of what got the ball rolling. And we'll throw out some other statistics for you, but let's put it into perspective first. This was a violent public execution in broad daylight on a city street in Dallas, Texas. It's still an unsolved cold case. There have been many fingers pointed at many different people and groups of people. Here are some that conspiracy theorists believe could be responsible. The FBI, the CIA, the Mafia, LBJ, or Lyndon Baines Johnson, the Vice President of the United States at that time, who was in the motorcade in which JFK was shot. Fidel Castro, dictator of Cuba. The Russians. What would it be without the Russians being the villain, right, guys?
Yeah.
You always got to have the Russians be the
Always.
villain. And they were back then as well. But the official version is the 1964 Warren Report. I have it right here. And my cameraman, Mr. Landon Olson, is going to be discussing this book with me later. This is the official version. It was a lone nut gunman named Lee Harvey Oswald. We'll see if you actually believe that or not. Now, if this was a lone nut gunman, what was the motive? And if you know anything about this, and it happened on live TV, so we've got a lone nut gunman that shoots the president from a building, and then 48 hours later, another lone nut gunman shoots that lone nut gunman. Wow, we're getting on wacky street already. This is all hard to comprehend. Can you imagine what was going through my 4-year-old mind? I still remember my dad's face. He was just aghast. It seemed like it couldn't be possible back then. And to many, it still doesn't. Mistrust of government quickly accelerated after 1963 because of the fact that Oswald was eliminated by Jack Ruby. We'll never know the truth. And there is no way that any of us sitting here in 2022 can have a clue as to what was really going on in 1963. I'm sorry, too much water under the bridge. Too much time has gone by. But we still talk about it. We still wonder about it. It's still on podcasts. I just saw it on the Joe Rogan Experience a few nights ago. They were discussing it again. More documents being declassified. 97% of the documents now have been declassified, but 3% remain. What's in those remaining 4,000 documents? Why? Is it a matter of national security? Most of the people involved in this thing are dead. Who are we protecting? Are we protecting people, or are we protecting an institution? These boys are thinking about this right now. I'm going to bring in other students as well to see what they think. A recent contact was made with an unnamed CIA insider. This is just in recent weeks, people. He's not a conspiracy theorist. He's an insider with the CIA, and this is what he had to say. He remains unnamed. Now that might seem a little suspicious, but here's what he had to say. He said, yes, the CIA was involved. Everything you thought you ever knew was a lie. It's all fake. I want everybody to just think about that, especially the two guys sitting off to my right here. Now I'm going to ask these boys a question or two each. Jacob, since you're closest to me, Jacob, what did you truly learn from the unit that we studied that you found most disturbing, fascinating, or troubling? Pick one.
You know, it's a really long list to choose from. I personally thought that just the general fishiness around it all. The Jack Ruby killing Oswald, and then Jack Ruby dying of a cancer in a hospital.
Yes.
And what was it, 2 days, 3 days, something like that?
It took a little longer.
Weeks,
I'd have to check on how much time, probably months.
Yeah.
It was in 1970, so maybe it was even a few years, but he had been complaining from his prison cell that a man in a black suit walked into the cell and injected him with cancer. Everybody laughed. Well, guess what? Short time later, he died of cancer. It was shortly after he had announced that he had been injected with it. So that's weird. I'm looking over here to my left at Jack Ruby, who it looks like 1967. He was a nightclub owner, and he's the guy that took out Oswald. The only murder that's ever been broadcast on national television. Can you believe that I actually saw it as a 4-year-old? You know, we talk about being traumatized by things. That certainly was a case for trauma, if I could ever think of one. He evidently became ill in prison and died of a pulmonary embolism from lung cancer on January 3rd, 1967, 4 years following the assassination. But he had announced that he was injected with something. I remember people talking about it when I was a kid, and I thought, oh, now he died. It's just weirdness following weirdness, oddity upon oddity. That's the way this whole case has been. Jacob, one more question for you. Why is this a concern for every American living today, you kids especially?
Well, you know, if obviously after this assassination, more measures have been put into place to protect your president on the public ventures, but it could happen. It could happen again, honestly.
And it hasn't. Are you aware of any presidents that have been shot at, possibly even shot since Kennedy?
Reagan, like John Hinckley Jr. in the 80s, yeah.
People don't realize that in 1981, Ronald Reagan shot on a sidewalk in Washington, D.C., didn't even know he was shot. It ricocheted off the limousine door. Again, a lone nut gunman. Surprise, surprise. And he didn't even realize he'd been shot. All of a sudden, he was foaming blood in the mouth in the presidential limousine, and they had to rush him to the hospital. He nearly died. It was an inch from his heart, but he recovered at age like 71. And Hinckley's out. He's out. The guy who tried to kill him is out on the street, walking around just like you and me.
Mm-hmm. Pled insanity and then
plead insanity.
Mm-hmm.
And these people get off. The guy who assassinated John Lennon, one of the Beatles, I think they still have him locked up, but yeah, he got off on the insanity plea. People that know him think he's just fine. He just wanted his 15 minutes of fame. You have to wonder what that's about. Now I'm going to go over to Cooper. Cooper, what did you find the most disturbing, fascinating, or troubling about the case?
Well, I like how a lot of different people could have had motives to do it, but I really feel it was pretty disturbing that you could have brought up the point that Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson could have had a large part to do with it because they didn't like each other at all.
Not at all. Just look at some pictures. They look at each other with disdain, especially Johnson at Kennedy. He didn't like JFK and he didn't like RFK, his brother. Guess who both ended up dead, folks? Both Kennedys. Okay. Well, let's get back to Jacob. Jacob, do you believe Oswald did it by himself, or do you believe that there's some agency or some nefarious underground organization that did it?
You know, I think there's just no possible way one person could have done it. From the nightclubs, Kennedy's guards tearing it up in the nightclubs the night before, to
4 in the morning.
4 in the morning.
They were out there, yeah, and they got to get up and protect the president, which they didn't seem to do very well.
No, not at all.
Yeah. What do you think about, either one of you two who wants to answer, what do you think about presidents riding around in an open convertible back then? And by the way, that was JFK's idea. He wanted to be seen and loved by the people of Dallas. He was trying to get their vote. It was a very Republican state, and he needed to win them over. It was kind of his first campaign stop for his next term in office. So what do you believe, Cooper?
Well, I believe at the time they probably thought nothing of it because they didn't think anything could happen. But now you can see like there's very clear dangers. But you could also say like even before that, before he was assassinated in like 1914, that Archduke Franz Ferdinand was shot from an open limousine.
Yes, not the first person to be assassinated. I believe we've had, is it 3 or 4 presidents actually assassinated?
Yeah, 4.
4? McKinley, Lincoln,
yeah.
Kennedy, and there's one other somewhat lightly known. There we go. We've got it up on the screen. James Garfield, who was shot dead in 1881. Not sure what that was all about, but nonetheless, there it is. Okay. One more question that we can have to go around here. What's the danger of believing that everything is a conspiracy and mistrusting government? We'll hear from both of these guys. Or the media. There's a lot being made about the media just sort of distorting, and we hear a lot about fake news. What do you guys think about that? Does conspiracy theory, which was hatched at the time that we are talking about this incident taking place, is now prevalent? And it has a negative connotation. People think that conspiracy theories are fools, gullible fools that'll believe anything they're told, that can be led around by a nose ring, that fall for every little fabricated detail that somebody wants to fictitiously throw together. What do you guys think? What's the danger in believing in conspiracies and in the media, and maybe mistrusting the media or the government?
Well, it just seems like there's a lot of information thrown at you every day. You just scroll through your phone and you'll see the news. Conspiracy theories, some are much more crazy than others, obviously.
Yes.
And the way I see it, I think there's a lot that's censored and there's a lot that's covered up for for people not to be paranoid and to keep faith in the government. So my take on it is that it's just people are trying to silence any other thought that they're not trying to put out.
Do you find that odd in the age of information, that we can just literally get on our keyboard and access just about anything we want to know about anything? Shouldn't we know the truth about everything by now? We should, but it seems like it's getting harder and harder to do so because there's so much to sort through. Do you agree, Cooper?
I do, in a way. I'd like to back off of Jacob a little bit. I think it's up to every individual to determine what's fact or fiction. I think some conspiracy theories are good, and I genuinely believe them. But things like the sewer man, I think people should be able to tell that that's complete nonsense.
Yes, Cooper says the sewer man, supposedly from a vent in the curb of a sidewalk on the street on Elm Street, where Kennedy was shot. Talk about Nightmare on Elm Street. There was a man possibly that poked a barrel of the gun out and shot JFK from the front there. And of course, we've all heard about the grassy knoll. We've discussed the umbrella man, the babushka lady. Oh, there are a number of wild figures out there. The woman in red, who had the red coat on. The Mary Mormon photo. Speaking of photographs, we did get into photographs of Oswald that may have been faked, and lots of other stuff. I want to thank these two gentlemen. We still have to fit some other students in here yet today, and of course I didn't wear my wristwatch, but we've got some time left. We're going to get some people in. Let's have the next pair come on in. Thank you very much, Cooper and Jacob.
Thank you
for sharing. And we will have you back to discuss your novels that you've been doing for independent reading at a later date. So thank you very much, and we'll bring on another two juniors. Oh. The next two that I have listed up there. Come on and join me. And we are back. We are discussing the JFK unit that we studied several weeks ago as part of American literature. We just kind of fast forwarded into the future, and we're sitting here today with Leo Barrett to my immediate right, and beside her, a new student at Central Valley this year, Charity Johnson. So we are eager to see what their perceptions of the event was and the unit that we studied. And you just heard me talk with a couple of boys, and I'm going to pretty much have the same questions for these two that I had for them. So we'll start with Leo. Leo, what did you truly learned from the unit, if anything, that you found disturbing, fascinating, or troubling?
I found that the reaction of Jackie Kennedy, like Kennedy's reaction after JFK was shot, to be very, very disturbing.
Okay. And why did you find it to be disturbing?
Because some reports state that she was trying to gather his brain matter.
Oh, yeah.
And then others state that she was trying to escape from the car. So.
Yeah. Chaos. All I can say is anybody who has ever seen the most famous piece of film in the world is a Zapruder film, knows that it is graphic and disturbing on any level of your imagination that you can possibly fathom. It is not for anybody probably under 14 or older if you are easily grossed out. But we are talking about a very, very bloody brains leaving somebody's head. It's there for anybody to see. And it's very hard to look at. So I can't think of anything more disturbing than that. Anything else, Leo, that you found a little bit off-putting?
The overall secrecy behind it.
Yes.
The whole assassination.
Do you believe, Leo, that this is of concern to your generation in any way as an American living today?
I would say the assassination itself, I would say not as much, but maybe how the government's role in it, how we don't know
if the government had a role in it, right? If let's assume that they did. Now, I'm not pushing conspiracy theories. I have thought this through all of my life. Decades, 6 decades now. And I have at times thought all roads lead back to Oswald. But I have problems with Oswald's role in it. I'm not sure what it was. And I have also circled around to the fact that I think it had to have been not just 2 people, but possibly an organization involved in this thing. I don't know. The more you get into it, it's an enigma wrapped inside of an enigma, which comes right out of the Oliver Stone JFK film. Yes, if it in fact was a conspiracy, what does that say about whether we should trust what the government tells us? And why did it really happen? I don't think we're ever going to get to the bottom of that one. One more question, Leo. Do you feel that the media sort of distorts things and all of the fake news, or do you think that we're making way too big a deal out of fake news?
I think it definitely does depend on the media organization itself. But overall, I think they do try to pander to certain groups that they believe will either give them coverage or that they trust more so.
Yes. If you're familiar with cable stations nowadays, CNN, accused often of being very far left, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, CBS get accused of it. A lot of the mainstream. Fox News, way too far right. It never used to dawn on people that there were news organizations that were in camp with perspectives either for or against certain people who may be leaders of this country. Congressmen, presidents, vice presidents, whatever. But it certainly shakes our confidence. Now we're going to hear from Charity. Charity, we're going to kind of take you back through the same things, perhaps not in the exact same order, but well, let's do so. What did you find most disturbing or fascinating or troubling as you learned about what happened in Dallas
Well, I found definitely the conspiracy theories that there is so many of them, just in one single thing.
So many.
And I also found that it was pretty disturbing just for all of that to happen right there in front of thousands of people.
Broad daylight.
Yeah.
And we still can't get the answers.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's aware of this, but initially, when the shots rang out, and by the way, we don't know how many shots there were, anywhere between 2 to 5. Some think more than 5, but that's generally the range. Probably most people think there were 3. One shot missed, apparently, and another one went through the back of Kennedy's neck or shoulder blades and came out right here. I think we can get into entrance and exit wounds, and we're going to be talking to another student about that because he read a book on that. But it is weird and strange, no doubt about it. But yeah, broad daylight, and we still can't figure it out. And everybody, getting back to what I was originally saying, everybody initially ran toward the grassy knoll. No one ran toward the school book depository, where the shots have supposedly been proven to have come from. They've matched up the ballistics to the gun that was found in the sniper's nest in the depository. They belong to Oswald's rifle. That's true. But I bet you haven't researched much about the magic bullet. One bullet that supposedly caused 7 wounds to 2 men, the other one being Governor John Connally. Oh, by the way, before I forget, one of my students brought in a little bust of JFK today. Wanted to get a good shot of that.
JFK.
Yeah, is that showing up okay? Yeah, look at that. Where'd you get that? Colin, did you bring it in?
We made it in the shop.
You made it in the shop.
3D
See?
printed it.
We started a fever in the school. Yeah. Assassination fever. Hate to bring comic relief to such a tragedy, but sometimes you have to. It's heavy stuff. All right, back to Charity. Charity, is this a concern for every American living today?
Definitely, I would say it could have been back then.
But-
Maybe a little more than now, but not as much. But if it were the government, then probably for sure.
Yeah. Do you feel that there's a genuine mistrust of the things that are being done in the Biden administration or in the Trump administration, since they both represented both parties, and we don't want to get into that. We don't want to get into that kind of thing here where we're pulling for one side or another, but what do you think about that?
I have many different options on if I do or not. It just depends on what they're doing. Like,
Yes.
if they mess something up, then it's gonna go down.
Yeah, yeah. And we're hit with so many things in the age of information. We just know so many more details about so many more different things now. It's hard to keep it all straight. But back then, seems like not as many things were happening, or at least we didn't find out about them. There, people only had 2 or 3 channels on TV. Now we have satellite feeds, you name it, we have it. The access to information. And what do you think is the danger of believing in conspiracy or mistrust? I think I've actually asked, I'm not going to ask that to you. What do you believe happened in Dallas in 1963?
I definitely believe that it couldn't have been just one single person, because I believe
If you had to
It would
pick,
be-
if you had to pick one, who would you pick?
I couldn't pick.
Too many to choose from?
That I definitely do not believe that it was just one single person, because if you think about it, it says that there's so many shots.
Yeah.
So if there's so many shots coming out of one single gun, then I don't know how that would work, but I do believe that it could have been 2 or 3 more people involved.
That's you have a lot of company because there are a great many people. Like I said, in 1983, as many as 74%, or 3 out of every 4 people believed that more than one person was involved. Okay, I thank you much, girls and boys and students of the junior class, all those who have participated so far. We're going to bring up yet 2 more, right? And we are back. We welcome you back to CV TV. You can find that, by the way, on our YouTube channel by just simply typing into the search bar CV space TV. There are a lot of channels on YouTube that are just 4 letters, CVTV, like way more than I thought. But if you put the space between CV and TV, you will find at least one episode. Episode 1 was sort of a trial and error and an impromptu off-the-cuff thing. So hopefully we're a little more polished here in episode 2. I'm speaking with Colin Higgins, yet another member of the junior class. And Colin has read up on and studied this case. Some of my kids are genuinely interested in it, and I know he's particularly interested in the ballistics, the guns that were possibly used or not used, because when you're talking about the Kennedy assassination, there's always that particular variation. Was it or was it not? Of course, that's up to you to decide. So, Colin, what is your take on ballistics, the guns that were used? I know this much. Initially, the Dallas Police Department, when they took the firearm into custody from the so-called crow's nest on the 6th floor of the depository, they identified it as a German Mauser. That wasn't what that gun was. The gun was, do you happen to know the name of the gun, the make?
The name of the gun, from what I know, is the Mannlicher Carcano 6.5 millimeter.
You are correct. And he ordered it out of a catalog, like a Sears catalog, for like $12 and some odd cents. And supposedly told people when he was carrying it into the depository that it was a bunch of curtain rods. He had been hiding it in a person called Ruth Payne's garage. Well, she would have had to have stumbled over that gun for months that he was living with her. She never recalled ever seeing the gun. And that's a whole nother part of the possible conspiracy. We are not conspiracy advocates here. We are people, I am a teacher who tries to teach kids to be open-minded about things. And remember, the official version is still the 1964 Warren Report, which is right here. It was one lone nut gunman named Lee Harvey Oswald, but a lot of speculation about Oswald. Back to Colin. By the way, here's our bust again from art class, the JFK bust. Nice little knick-knack here that I have sitting around. What is your biggest, let's call it puzzlement, about guns or ballistics, Colin?
Well, with this situation, I watched a couple of videos with this caliber rifle, and the trajectory of the bullet, especially the magic bullet theory, just doesn't make any sense to me.
The magic bullet theory. Supposedly one bullet went through, entered and exited 7 different times through 2 men, going through large bones and organs and cartilage, deflecting here and there. Supposedly at one point the bullet must have turned in midair to strike Governor Connolly, who was sitting in the passenger side in the front seat. And of course, so many people just could not accept that. What do you think about that, Colin?
Well, from what I've seen with this particular rifle cartridge, is that after it enters the target, it tends to do this unique phenomenon called the keyhole, where it goes sideways. And with the magic bullet theory, it didn't do that.
It didn't do that.
It went straight through one body into the other. And we'll show a picture of it later, but the bullet itself had minimal damage, even though it hit several important organs and maybe cartilage and bone.
Let's take a look at that magic bullet that went through Kennedy, passed through the body of Connolly, 7 entry and exit wounds. Are we seeing that right now, Landon? Okay, there it is for you folks, the pristine bullet that they just happened to find on a stretcher at Parkland Hospital. How convenient, I thought. Even as a little kid, I went, wow, that bullet doesn't even look like it was damaged. I mean, I knew that as a 6-year-old. Like, anybody could see that. How could it not be damaged? There it is. You're looking at it right there. And we know what the other bullet did. It literally exploded inside the president's head, did tremendous explosive damage. I don't have as much probably gun experience. I know you're a hunter, Colin. Can you explain to me how 2 different bullets can act so differently in the human body?
Well, ballistics sometimes can be a complete mystery on how they work, but with that
Good to
one,
know. Good to know.
that also puzzles me because I watched someone try to recreate the scenario, although it was a complete different range than what supposedly happened.
Yes.
It's still, the bullet passed completely through the test dummy's head and went through another 3 or 4 jugs of water and was preserved perfectly fine.
Yes, I've seen that video segment. They've tried to recreate the timing of getting off the 3 shots, if there were 3 shots. You can never get 2 tests that come out the same way. You cannot duplicate the same conditions that existed in 1963. You can believe in the magic bullet. It's accepted as part of the official version. I have a hard time with it. I think a lot of the American public does. The second thing we want to take a look at, Landon, if you could put up the photos of the infamous photographs taken days before the assassination of Oswald in the backyard. Now, his wife, Marina Oswald, his Russian bride, which is a whole nother story, that is interesting in itself. From the time I saw this as a little kid, I thought, why is he standing so awkwardly? His weight distribution does not seem right. To me, it looks like the head is pasted onto somebody else's body. By the way, Marina Oswald says she took 1 photo that day. There now are 3 existing photos. For many years, there were only 2. A1 and A2. Now there's A1, A2, A3. Suddenly somebody found a 3rd photograph. You're seeing one of those photographs right there. He's holding this gun that he got out of the catalog. It is that Carcano Mannlicher or Mannlicher Carcano gun that he bought for $12. Later on, you will see the police captain of Dallas carrying it through the hallway of the police station. Then mysteriously it has a strap on it, a shoulder strap. What did they do? Attach the strap onto the gun after this photograph was taken days before? Or after they took it out of the crow's nest? Your guess is as good as mine. What are your thoughts on that, Colin?
Well, that's particularly mysterious. One day he's taken on picture, weird shadow, it was supposedly a cloudy day. Nothing with that picture adds up, and then just mysteriously, the strap is on.
Yes, I would like everyone to take a good look at what Colin just referred to with regard to the photograph. Was this photograph faked? I want you to notice the shadow underneath Oswald's nose. There it is right there. It almost makes him look like Hitler. He's got a direct shadow. That would indicate the time in which Marina Oswald corroborates, saying that the photograph was taken at noon several days before the assassination on a particular day that I cannot right now recall. But they checked that day. The Weather Service says the weather that day in Dallas, all over Dallas-Fort Worth, very overcast, thick overcast, cloudy. How do you have sunlight? How do you have 3 photographs when she says she took 1? Is that Oswald? Again, I'm not advocating for conspiracy. I don't think Colin is. I don't think any of my students are. We're just trying to logically explain some of these things that have persisted as myth and in some cases legend for 59 years now. So, and if you look at other aspects of this photograph, and I have seen it examined for 45 minutes by experts, they all agree this thing looks photoshopped. And if that photograph is photoshopped, we really don't have any hard evidence to link Oswald to that gun. All right. Do I believe Oswald was a shooter that day? I do. Colin, do you believe he was?
It's a big possibility that we can't ignore. He was there with
He was there with a gun. What kind of gun? I don't know. Was the Carcano gun planted? It sure seemed like it was conveniently found. But then you have to study the body of Officer Tippit, who they also pinned on Oswald 1 hour after the shooting of the president. And there's a dispute as to different shells that were found inside of Tippit's body that weren't from the same gun. And then there was the case of the theater. What did you make out of the theater when they captured him and his gun, Oswald's gun jammed, his pistol?
Well, I also researched how reliable revolvers are last night, and they can have their fair share of issues, but Oswald being ex-military, I would think he has exquisite knowledge on how to operate a revolver properly.
Exactly. And if he had just got done shooting at least Officer Tippit, which they say he did, and then he pulls the gun out again when the cops are coming for him in the Texas theater. By the way, how they knew that Oswald was going into that theater still perplexes me. Wow, that's great communication by a relatively small police department from a relatively small American city. And all of a sudden, it's just so neatly wrapped. Everything just falls into place. We've got our guy. This guy did it. Remember, Oswald was never officially charged with the killing of the murder of President Kennedy. He was shot to death himself before he was officially charged. Oh, and did they take notes at the police department for 48 hours that they had him in custody? Not one note exists. No tape recording of anything that he said. Seems like shoddy police work to me. What do you think, Colin?
I mean, it's suspicious. You have a suspect that just supposedly shot the president and one other police officer.
Yeah.
You take him in for custody, you interview him for hours, and then there's no notes whatsoever on what happened.
Exactly. Now, does it make Oswald look bad? Sure does. Incriminating? Absolutely. In every way possible. But this could have been schemed, planned. He could have been some kind of an accomplice. He could have been set up. I'm talking about Oswald. Maybe there were other players that we don't know about, that he either knew or that he didn't know. He could have been an agent of the CIA, American CIA. He could have been a double agent from Russia and America playing that game. I don't know about the spy game. I don't know anything about it. I don't think anybody else will ever know anything about that. You know, that's shadowy activity. We're not privy to that. Nonetheless, it just is the proverbial enigma wrapped inside the enigma. As soon as you try to put one thing to the side, another box opens up and it's a whole new controversy. Like, is it or isn't it? So there we have it. I wish we could talk more, but we have a limited amount of time. I thank you very much, Colin, for your interest in this. And certainly I believe that there are questions about the guns used and the ballistics of regarding the bullets. that were fired into two different men. So thank you very much, Colin. And we will take a break here and be back shortly with more on CVTV. All right. Welcome back to CVTV. We are now into a different phase of our discussion. And the last portion, and I probably have some students in here who are thankful for that, of the whole assassination case. There are two particular books I want to hold up right here and show you. I'm going to be talking to Landon about the greatest book of fiction in the world, the 1964 Warren Report. I say that jokingly. It's supposedly very much nonfiction, since it's supposed to be pure fact. And then I'm going to talk to Austin about a book that he read by a guy named, let's see, what's his name? Charles Crenshaw, MD. JFK has been shot. A Parkland Hospital surgeon speaks out. And we know that not just Kennedy, but also Oswald were rushed to Parkland Hospital just in the suburbs of Dallas there, and where there were attempted autopsies on Kennedy to be done by the state of Texas, which is law. But of course, there was a big struggle with the feds who wanted to take the body back to Washington, D.C. So they got into a literal fight in the hospital. And then there's a whole controversy about a bunch of people being in the operating room about which surgeon did what, because there were several surgeons attending to Kennedy. And they never turned the body over to see the exit wounds or entry wounds that may have been in the back of the body. If he was shot from behind, there would obviously be entry wounds. Well, the Parkland doctors later on said, we didn't turn the body over. And there was a second autopsy done at Bethesda in Maryland, not far from Washington, D.C., and tremendous discrepancy on entry and exit wounds in Kennedy. Tremendous between the two autopsies, almost like one was trying to cover up the other. Again, you can believe what you want to believe. You have to be open-minded with this stuff. Now I'm going to discuss with Landon, discussing this infamous Warren Report. Landon, I said yesterday that 60% of people in the United States believe in conspiracies of all kinds. As many as 73% believe that more than one person did the shooting of the 35th President of the United States. That was in 1983. I believe that has fallen off to maybe around 50% now. It could be up around 60%, so pretty much on the average. But I have this question for you, Landon. And by the way, Landon's our main guy that kind of got all this stuff going, and does a lot behind the camera. So we have Jacob behind the camera right now, since Landon is our guest. So Landon, so many people were never questioned who were there that day in Dealey Plaza. The Warren Commission, appointed entirely by Lyndon Baines Johnson, did not question a lot of witnesses, maybe as many as 50 who were there that day. Why not? Why not? Why not at least interview them to see what they saw, or to hear what they saw? What do you think, Landon? Well, how could they have missed so many people? Why are we overlooking those people?
I don't know why they'd overlook those people, because those are important pieces in every case. You want as many witnesses and people involved in the whole entire event as possible to even...
Exactly. To disregard them as not being credible witnesses, I don't know how that happened. Contradictions about the number of shots fired. You can take a guess if you want. How many shots do you believe were fired?
Well, from what I've watched on the tape, I think there's at least 3, and then plus there's that cut in the tape, so there could have been more. I know there's been, what, 2 to 7?
2 to 7 shots, 2 to 5, some say. It depends on who you talk to that was there that day. Remember, Dealey Plaza is a place where you have a few kind of taller buildings, and there was a tremendous echo chamber there. So it's practically impossible that we'll ever know how many shots were fired, how many missed. We were talking yesterday, Landon and myself, about, Oswald had a lot better shot that he could have taken at Kennedy. Can you explain that, Landon?
Well, from the crow's nest or whatever you call it in the Texas Book Depository, the president comes head on towards you, which would be a much easier shot than letting him come and turn around the bend. And then he took the hardest shot he probably could have possibly took to kill the president.
Through a tree in full bloom.
And there's also another traffic light in the way, too.
And a traffic light, which, by the way, had a nick in it that looked like it was made by a bullet. Could have been a deflected shot, could have been a missed shot. Who knows?
Well, if there is a bullet nick in there, that would show there was more than 2 shots a day, because that's the official Warren report thing. Because there's the chunk of concrete that's missing. There was obviously the 2 that hit the president, and if there was another one that hit the light post, that'd be 4 bullets at least.
There's another man named James Tagg who ended up getting hit in the cheek by something that was very sharp at the time of the shooting. He was standing by the triple underpass, and it drew blood. And they found out it was some kind of a bullet fragment. And it appears that it may have come from the gun, from the depository, the Carcano gun, as were the fragments taken out of Connolly's wrist. Now, that pulls you back to kind of believing it had to be Oswald. But as soon as you get back there, something else makes you believe, no, there's no way it could have happened that way. Let's look at something else here. With regard to the Warren report, Landon, mistrust in government started going downhill. Because you got to realize what happened during the 1970s. Well, first of all, the brother of the president was shot to death, assassinated, in 1968, 5 years after President Kennedy was, and he was the Attorney General. And he was running for president, he would have probably won. Seems to me like somebody wanted the Kennedys gone. What do you think?
Well, as you said, there's been some sort of like Kennedy curse. It seems that family's just riddled with unknown
tragedy.
Mystery. Yeah, and they're all unsolved. It seems. I don't know.
Yes.
Are there any of them that actually had their killer or found or?
There is. Let's just say that a lot of these untimely deaths of the Kennedy clan members are always shrouded in mystery. Always. One skied into a tree and was killed in a skiing accident. JFK Jr. in 1999. Plane suddenly went down, straight down into the ocean when he was almost to his destination. Nobody knows why. Weather conditions were nearly perfect. Suddenly it looked like he didn't know how to fly. Weird. That's all we can say about that. But confidence in government and trust in government sort of eroded because of things like Watergate with Nixon, the Vietnam War. Nobody wanted that to be raging on much longer than it already had. So, like I said before, by 1983, 74% doubted the Warren report. And can you tell me how you feel about this, Landon? Why are there still 4,000 documents still classified if literally every person involved in this case is dead, deceased?
Well, it just seems like it's a massive cover-up if they're keeping so much away from the public, because there's no point in holding it back anymore.
I just don't understand why they would, unless they don't want us to know something. Maybe they're protecting not so much men, but maybe an institution that, I don't know, you can speculate all you want as to the reasons why. We could talk all day long about that. Also, Landon, the report failed to present convincing evidence as to motive. Why would Oswald want to shoot Kennedy? Can you think of any good motive that he would have had?
The only motive I can think of is, as from reading the diary and the Warren Report, he loved communism for some reason, even though he went to Russia and came back. His love for communism was kind of flip-floppy the entire thing.
Wishy-washy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which sometimes may indicate some
Double
sort
agent.
of double agent kind of activity. Yeah, absolutely. Again, we don't like to lean toward conspiracy, but this thing is the grand poopah of all conspiracies. There is none on a scale. No event in history is on the scale that this one is when it comes to questions about how could this have possibly happened. It just doesn't seem real. Pictures faked in the backyard, we've already looked at those. If Oswald had played any part, what role was he playing in this? Remember now, Lyndon Baines Johnson, whom many believe was trying to grab power for himself because the vice president becomes the president, like he did, he handpicked the Warren Commission. Handpicked them. And remember, he didn't care too much about the Kennedys, or didn't care for them. Matter of fact, there's literally hatred there. But they were his guys. And did they just put this report together quickly and say this is the official version and we're sticking to it? A lot of people believe that's the way it went down, but that's up to you. I've read many books on this subject. I've looked at countless documentaries. I'm no closer to the truth than anybody who's ever studied it. Matter of fact, I think in some ways I'm getting further away. Okay, very good. We could talk about the Warren. Is there anything else that you'd like to say? The last thing here, Landon, I hate to rush things, but we're going to get Austin in here and wind up this phase of our independent book study, and that's the phase we're in, by the way. What's your last word on the Warren Report?
Well, I'll just end it off like this. It's basically a big puzzle with pieces that don't fit together. So
Indeed.
You sit there and you try to put it all together, but nothing really clicks smoothly together.
It really doesn't, and you'd think it would after 59 years. You'd think we'd have those pieces in place in that puzzle. And there are big ones missing. So, very good. Austin, we're going to wind up the JFK phase today. And remember his book, JFK has been shot. A Parkland hospital surgeon speaks out. Of course, he was one of several surgeons that were there that day. And I have just a few questions for Austin. If my phone would quit blacking out, it would be great. Okay. Now apparently I've forgotten my code. Okay. All right. I'm going to end up dialing 911 here. I'm not careful. All right. Let's see. Kennedy ballistics, I believe that's it. All right. Did you read a lot about autopsies, Austin?
Well, only from the JFK has been shot.
Okay.
On that autopsy.
Yep.
The one thing that gets me confused is they were really protective of the president's body when the Parkland wanted to do the autopsy.
You talk about the Secret Service?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like they almost drew their weapons and
Yes, indeed.
on the surgeons that wanted to.
It was pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were terrified.
They were terrified. It was chaotic and terrifying, that whole scene, as you might expect that it would be. And I have already mentioned when we were talking about the Warren Report, there were not one, but two autopsies that contradicted one another on bullet wounds. And I'm sure you read about that, Austin.
Yep.
One bullet passing through two men, 7 wounds, came out in pristine condition. We saw the picture. The other imploded inside the head. Seems weird. Same gun? Who knows? We've talked about the magic bullet. but the fragments seem to match up with the gun up in the crow's nest. So again, we're pulled back and forth. Now, Austin, a month after the shooting, FBI ballistic experts concluded that Kennedy and Connolly were probably struck by different bullets. But the Warren Commission changed that once they latched onto the magic bullet theory. What do you know about the wounds? Do you think that there was something weird going on with moving the wounds around in the diagrams, or possibly actually doing surgery to manipulate those wounds?
Well, they probably did try to seem like it was different. Like, I think the Secret Service maybe tampered with the evidence of the
Or somebody did.
surgery. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all confusing around there. And,
What did this particular surgeon, what was his story?
he was in the surgeon room helping, and
Trauma room? Yep.
he kind of felt like a connection. Like, even though most Texans didn't like the president,
True.
he felt like a connection. Like, he was friends with him for a long time.
Okay.
That's
So he had a personal connection to Kennedy. And did you find him believable or credible?
yeah.
Okay.
He's really believable.
What did this particular surgeon believe in terms of where the shots came from, in terms of the depository or the grassy knoll, the front or the back?
I'm not really sure. I probably didn't get to that part.
Okay.
yet. It only talked about his, like, he was in the trauma room.
Okay.
And only the surgeon, they were doing surgery on him.
Yes.
About the, and then they went to the Bethesda.
Yes. And did another autopsy, because evidently the one at Parkland wasn't
It wasn't good.
good enough. Okay. And they're going to do their own, and they're going to take the body, and then they were fighting over the body and the coffin. And even the coffin, they had to tear the handle off at one point because they couldn't squeeze it into the plane, and lots of things that people don't know about. Again, you have to expect that that scene was chaotic at the very least. What was the most interesting thing you found from the book, Austin?
And when they were doing the autopsy at the these Bethesda surgeons, they're like professionals, but somehow like it got messed up somehow. Like,
Yeah.
it was like tampered with.
Yep.
Like, these are professional surgeons, and they still didn't get
And their
it right.
stories don't match.
They don't connect.
That worries me. When the surgeons who did the autopsy can't agree on the wounds and where the direction of the bullets entered and exited, and possibly manipulated to look a certain way, like they came from behind rather than in the front, when in fact conspiracy people would believe that they had to come from the front. Remember, the most important phrase from this whole case is, look at the Zapruder film. Kennedy's head goes back and to the left, back and to the left. It appears that he was shot from the front, but all kinds of people, forensic people, will tell you that the human body can react to a bullet wound in strange and mysterious ways. So again, we're on a dead end, just like the rest of the Kennedy case. All right. Any other fascinating things from either one of the two of you that you'd like to get out there before we sign off on the Kennedy case?
Well, during the book, I read that Oswald, he was found at the cafeteria drinking like
Coke?
soda, and he was not out of breath from running from the top floor all the way down.
Which would have made somebody exhausted, and he appeared to be completely composed, if in fact the person that he identified as Oswald was in fact Oswald. I've even heard that Oswald had a double. Now, you have to figure out, if he was in the CIA and this was all a setup, they could have had body doubles, just like actors have. We do know this. Oswald had several aliases. Why? By the way, did you know that Oswald had also taken shots at a federal judge through the window of his house, but the shots missed? Everybody knows that. That's a fact. Oswald was capable of murder. Don't forget that. He was. He could have, he did shoot at a federal judge. They pinned the murder of a police officer, J.D. Tippit, on Oswald. The only thing they didn't pin on him, because there wasn't enough time, was the murder of the president. But evidently, this is a guy that had shot at significant people before. He had done it before. He was capable of it. But he could have just been a player. Fact is, guys, and all of you out there, we will probably never know. And I don't think we're ever going to see through the redactions of the documents that have been released. And I don't think we're ever going to see 100% of the documents become declassified. That's just the way it is, folks. I guess we're just not meant to, as human beings, be satisfied and know what really happened, even though I've spent a better part of my life trying to. I'm no closer than I've ever been before, and I don't know if these guys feel like they believe they know.
It's just like a circle. You go back.
It's a circle. You keep circling around and coming back. And I used to say all trails eventually come back to Oswald, but Oswald was a shady character. You cannot deny that. So, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed our little study and discussion of the JFK murder case, the most appalling thing perhaps that has ever happened in the United States of America that changed modern history permanently. So with that, we will sign off for the day. It's just about lunchtime. And this is Devery Fikert, English teacher here at Central Valley School for CVTV. We will say so long.